So now I'm sitting down with, I'm going to say it, internet royalty. He's a massive inspiration to me. He is best known as the Angry Video Game Nerd, but he also runs the website cinemassacre.com. He is also a filmmaker as well as a published author. I have the honor to be sitting down with one James Rolfe. James, thank you so much for doing this and sitting down and chatting with me about horror films, something that I know both of us really love.
Oh, cool. Thank you.
What was kind of your introduction to horror films? What really got you into the genre? And then sort of what were the films in particular that really kind of impacted you both as a filmmaker and just as a lover of movies?
Oh, well, I suppose, the earliest horror films I must have seen as a kid, in the 80s, I saw Gremlins, Ghostbusters, which are this sort of horror film. They have some horror elements in them. Really started getting into Godzilla and the classic monsters, all the black and white ones from the 30s and 40s. And then I kind of like chronologically went forward in time. So then as I got a little older, I started renting the Nightmare on Elm Street movies from the video store. And I kind of just like worked my way up to the modern era. Yeah, Monster Vision was a huge influence on me, and then when Joe Bob came into it and introduced me to a lot of the Friday the 13th movies and all that kind of stuff, that was one of the first times I think I've really seen like a TV host of that kind, somebody just who's a fan talking about these movies and giving you some information, but also giving you some good laughs and entertainment to go with it.
You've obviously gotten to meet Joe Bob Briggs on multiple occasions, even sit down and interview him, and kind of what was that like? And did you ever think watching Monster Vision and watching Joe Bob that one day you'd get to be sitting right across from him and chatting about these kinds of movies?
It was definitely surreal, but it also was very natural. But what was more surreal for some reason was when on the last drive-in, when they mentioned me a couple of times, and for some reason, whenever that happens, it's like it gets me really excited. I'm like, oh wow, that's crazy. Just to think that when they're on the other side of the screen, it's always more surreal in some way. But when you actually meet the person, it's like, okay, it's real life. Things are just normal. You know what I mean?
So obviously, filmmaking was your passion. You started making movies since you were a little kid. But you mainly worked doing horror films. And what was kind of like your favorite thing about making horror films in particular?
Oh, I suppose I was very like awkward and not very social. But all my friends in the neighborhood just made me feel like I could be whoever I wanted to be. So I think it was that making movies might have been sort of like my social outlet in a way. So I don't know why I gravitate towards it, because I did painting, I did like drawing, and I was thinking about doing animation, but that was kind of like a lot of long, lonely hours. The Deader the Better comes to mind, since we're on the horror topic. Like that one was a zombie film I made a while ago, and that it was very new that it was pre-YouTube, just barely pre-YouTube, and it was just it represents a different era for me.
You started doing The Nerd not too long after you had graduated from college. And right away, once you were doing the Nerd episodes, you started doing Halloween episodes. And you did stuff like Nightmare on Elm Street, you did Friday the 13th, you did Halloween. And while you were doing them, you were also sort of trying to recreate a lot of the stuff that goes on in those movies, in those series. And kind of what was that like, getting to essentially do your own version of these horror franchises that you had grown up watching for so long?
I always wanted to go farther with it, so it starts with a really big idea, and then you sort of just have to scale it down to like, what can you actually do? So I remember when I did the Halloween episode, I wanted it to open originally with a scene of the nerd as a child when he first plays the game. It didn't even have to be the Halloween game, but the first time he played a bad game as a child. And it's all done in POV, just like the opening scene in Halloween. And where he puts you see Michael Myers put the mask on, in a POV shot. where he
Mhm.
puts on the glasses. It's the first time that the nerd glasses come on. And then I didn't fully develop the idea. I didn't figure out exactly what happens after that. Like, does he like stab the game to death or whatever happens? But and I'm starting with this really big idea, and I'm like, okay, what can I do in a month and a half, basically? So
Mhm.
let's see what I can actually uh, accomplish. So it's going to get scaled down, but it's still going to be like one of those, like
Mhm.
the Texas Chainsaw Massacre or the Halloween episode, Friday the
Mhm.
13th, any of those,
Mhm. But similar, then you've also done Halloween episodes since then, where you weren't parodying a movie or you weren't trying to
Yeah.
recreate scenes from movies. You were very much kind of creating your own mini horror film, and one
Mhm.
that I think is really interesting is the Polybius episode. I think that one is a really great example.
Todd had a fake Polybius machine, and knowing we had the arcade area and the where we did a lot of B-roll
Mhm.
with the warehouse, which had all the like pinball games and everything. They do all these like pinball repairs and all this stuff, and it's a really cool place in general. But we had that as a location. We I started there. That's where I started to start writing something that could be filmed.
But obviously, when it comes to Halloween or horror films, especially over at Cinemassacre, the biggest thing is typically what I associate with it is Monster Madness.
Yeah, I mean, basically, it just starts with just looking at a bunch of movies and deciding what I want to do. Like, what is it that's going to interest me the most to talk about, and then
Mhm.
I just start from that. Um, the first year, how the whole thing started, it was um, just I wanted to introduce people to these movies because the
Mhm.
first year they were only like these 1 minute, like 2 minute videos maybe,
Mhm.
because it was back then I always thought of the internet as like a short form entertainment where it was like quick. Everything
Mhm.
was always quick, like stuff you could watch like on your lunch break, whatever. It was basically like the movie of the day. Like that was just the
Mhm.
idea. So, but then after that, I was really pleased with the response. And a lot of people to this day still tell me like, oh, I was introduced to those movies because of
Mhm.
your videos. And that was like, that's what I wanted. So mission accomplished. Whenever it was 31, those were the most difficult.
Mhm.
I'm most nostalgic for the first year,
Mhm.
um, because that was like just the first time doing it. But I think I like the sequel ones where he did like a whole bunch of sequel, like one franchise, and then just went through the whole thing. Especially the Hammer ones. I had a lot of
Mhm.
fun doing the Hammer ones for sure.
When it comes to circle back to filmmaking a little bit. So, as mentioned, AVGN the movie, it's your biggest production to date. You've never done anything to that scale before that. But if you had the opportunity to do, say, a horror film, I know that you've had a video kind of talking about your idea for a horror film, and I'm sure there's other ideas. Um, would you ever do a production like that to the scale of the AVGN movie if the opportunity presented itself?
I mean, the only thing it would have to be like the main thing then. It would just be like,
Mhm.
okay, I'm just working on this for like
Mhm.
years now. It's like that's
Mhm.
going to be it. And they're also it's also kind of more fun in a way to do shorter content because then you get the relief of finishing it and then putting it out in the world and having people see it. Whereas a movie, you got to wait years and years before it's going to be done and
Mhm.
before anybody can see it. So in all that time, it's just like you want to tell people what it is, but you don't want to spoil it.
Mhm.
Um, it's just like, hey, I'm working on this. You'll see it eventually, but
Mhm.
you know,
I want to thank you again so much for sitting down with me as kind of a dream come true for me, getting to chat with you and talk about horror films. You can find James and all of his great work over at cinemassacre.com, as well as on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, all those social media handles. You can pick up his book, A Movie Making Nerd, wherever books are sold. And you can also check out his band, Rex Viper. I'm pretty sure some of the songs and stuff can be found on Spotify or wherever you listen to music. There also, I believe, there are some tour dates or concert, like you guys do have some
yeah. Well,
performance dates.
yeah. We have one on Friday the 13th coming up, and also we're focusing on the album mostly. So hopefully you'll have that soon, where you could hear all the songs because they sound so much better now. I can't wait to hear like the production on it is really
Mhm.
good.